Legends. 52 People Who Made a Difference by Michael Ryall. Copyright 2006 by Michael Ryall. Published by ProLingua Associates, Brattleboro, Vermont. www.prolinguaassociates.com. Johnny Appleseed. Johnny Appleseed's real name was John Chapman. He was born in Massachusetts on September 26, 1774. There are lots of stories about Johnny Appleseed. Some are true and some aren't. In the early 1800s, Johnny arrived in the Ohio River Valley. He began to grow apple trees from seeds. He sold trees, and he gave many trees away. Johnny died in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in 1845. Other people took his seeds all the way across the country to California. Today, there are apple trees everywhere in America.
Nat Love. Nat Love was born a slave in 1854. He got his freedom when he was 11 years old. In his teens, Nat lived in Dodge City, Kansas. He was in a group of cowboys called the Duval Outfit. Nat entered a roping contest at the age of 22. He roped a cow in 9 minutes. People called him the champion roper of the Western cattle country. Steam trains came to the West in the late 1800s. Many cowboys got jobs on the railroad. Nat took a job as a porter. Sometimes he missed riding horses and roping cows, but he had lots of stories to tell the passengers. Soon he became very popular. In 1907, Nat wrote the story of his life. It was called The Life and Adventures of Nat Love. Nat told about the places he had been and the things he had done. He died in 1921.
Daniel Boone. Nobody is quite sure when Daniel Boone was born. Most people think that he was born around 1734. As a young man, Daniel was a hunter and trapper. He knew how to live in the wilderness. In 1775, he got a job making trails. He made a trail called the Wilderness Road. He started a settlement on the Wilderness Road. The settlement was called Boonesboro. The settlers in Boonesboro went to war with the Shawnee, a Native American tribe. In 1778, the Shawnee kidnapped Daniel. He lived with the Shawnee for 5 months. Then he escaped and ran back to Boonesboro. He warned the settlers that the Shawnee were coming. Daniel saved the settlers. 10 years later, Daniel decided to leave Boonesboro. He said it was too crowded. He traveled in a canoe to Missouri. He lived there for the rest of his life. Daniel died at the age of 86. At first, he was buried in Missouri. 25 years later, his body was moved to Boonesboro. His grave is in a cemetery on top of a hill.
Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley was born in 1860 in Ohio. Her full name was Phoebe Ann Oakley Moses. Her mother called her Phoebe, but her sisters called her Annie. The family was poor. Annie's father had died shortly after she was born. To help her mother, Annie learned how to hunt with a rifle. At the age of 9, she could hit anything with her rifle. As a young woman, Annie entered a shooting contest with a man named Frank Butler. Annie won the contest, and she fell in love with Frank. They got married and went into show business. Frank and Annie went to vaudeville shows and circuses. People paid money to watch them shoot targets. Annie was a perfect shooter. Her fame spread far and wide. In 1885, Annie joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. It had cowboys, Native Americans, and sharpshooters. Sitting Bull, a Native American leader, was in the show. He called Annie Little Miss Sure Shot. He gave her that name because she was only 5 feet tall. Annie was in Buffalo Bill's show for 17 years. Annie's tricks were amazing. She could shoot a card 5 times before it hit the ground. She could aim by looking in a mirror. Annie kept her perfect aim even in old age. She died in 1926 at the age of 66. Her husband Frank died that same year. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born in Maryland in 1821. All the members of her family were slaves. The woman in charge of Harriet whipped her every day. Harriet decided to run away. She escaped, and she reached the free state of Pennsylvania. It was her first taste of freedom. She wanted to share her freedom with others. Harriet went back to Maryland secretly for her sister. They walked through the woods at night. They followed the North Star. Slave hunters chased them. The trip was dangerous, but Harriet went back for her brother. 6 years later, she freed her parents. Harriet made 19 trips and rescued more than 300 slaves.
Clara Barton. Clara Barton was born in Massachusetts in 1821. As a young woman, she was a school teacher. But in 1861, the Civil War began. It was a bloody and deadly war. Nurses and doctors were needed on the battlefield. Clara decided to become a nurse. In addition to her duties as a nurse, she distributed supplies for wounded soldiers. She also set up a system to search for missing men. Clara became known as the Angel of the Battlefield. The Civil War ended in 1865, but Clara continued her work as a nurse. In 1881, she founded the American Red Cross, and she was its president until 1904. Clara died in 1912, but the American Red Cross exists today. It helps people who are affected by wars and natural disasters. That was Clara's dream, and her dream came true.
Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born in Maryland. He was the son of a slave. He was taken away from his mother to a plantation at the age of 6. Frederick was treated very badly. He had to eat out of a trough, and he slept on the floor. He had only one shirt and no sheets or blankets. When Frederick was about 10, he was taken to Baltimore. He decided to learn how to read and write. He asked poor white children to be his teachers, and he paid them with pieces of bread. His master screamed at him whenever he caught Frederick reading. It was against the law for slaves to read or write. One day, Frederick's master whipped Frederick. Frederick decided to fight back. He and his master fought for 2 hours. In Frederick's mind, he stopped being a slave on that day. In 1838, Frederick fled to New York, running from slave catchers along the way. In New York and Boston, Frederick gave speeches and wrote against slavery. He started an anti-slavery newspaper called the North Star. Frederick lived to see the end of slavery. In 1889, he became the U.S. Minister to Haiti. His autobiography is now considered to be a classic.
Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was born in New York State in 1797. Her given name was Isabella. Her parents were both slaves, and so was she. She knew only one of her 11 brothers and sisters. The others were sold to different slave owners before she was born. By the time she was 20, Isabella had also been sold several times to different masters. As a slave, she had to do all kinds of work: cooking, cleaning, working in the fields. During this time, she had 2 children. The slave owner sold them both. Once again, Isabella was separated from her family. She decided to escape, first to a neighbor's house and then to New York City. At a religious festival, Isabella had a powerful religious experience. She heard voices and saw visions. She wanted to share her experience, so she started to sing, pray, and preach. Isabella changed her name to Sojourner, which means traveler, and she traveled from town to town in the Northeast and Midwest. Wherever Sojourner went, she spoke out against slavery and for women's rights. In 1865, slavery finally came to an end. Sojourner helped freed slaves to find work and a place to live. She encouraged thousands of African Americans to settle in Kansas. Many of their descendants still live there to this day. Sojourner worked for equal rights until she was too old to travel. Then she settled down in her home in Battle Creek, Michigan. That is where she died on November 26, 1883. Chief Joseph. Chief Joseph was a Native American leader. In the late 1800s, the U.S. government forced many Native Americans to live on reservations. Then the government began to take away some of the reservations. Chief Joseph fought for his people's land. He wanted to avoid war, but he and his people, the Nez Perce, had to fight back. They won many battles, but the U.S. Army used guns. After 3 months, Chief Joseph had to surrender. The U.S. government forced Chief Joseph and his people to leave their land. Chief Joseph said, "I am tired of fighting. I will fight no more forever."
Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull was probably born in 1834. In his youth, other children called him Slow. When he was 10, Slow killed his first buffalo. He gave the meat to a poor family that needed food. Later, at the age of 14, Slow fought bravely in a battle. His courage and generosity earned him the name Sitting Bull. To be named after a bull was a great honor. It was the name of a leader. In 1869, Sitting Bull became chief of the Sioux Nation. 5 years later, the U.S. government sent General Custer to fight the Sioux for their land. Custer led his army in an attack against the Sioux at a place called the Little Bighorn. Sitting Bull and other Sioux leaders destroyed Custer's army. In 1881, Sitting Bull surrendered. He traveled with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show for a while. In 1890, while he was being arrested, he was killed.